Hey there, Next Wave Network. Unfortunately, in the wonderful conversation that JJ and I had over lunch yesterday, we failed to record my screen, and on my screen was a lot of the information that we had been talking about. So I'm recording this little addendum um, to the conversation that we had. I'm going to put this introduction at the beginning, and then I'll go through the board at the end. But suffice to say, during our conversation, we did some mind mapping, and we did this really rough-looking user experience flow, and we will. I'll go through this a little bit more at the end. So enjoy the conversation, and again, apologies for the technical snafu.
Well, welcome to our community lunch, and I've brought my lunch. As everyone is welcome to eat during this discussion. I think part of the reason for the community lunch and to bring in honored, brilliant guests like the one we have today, Aaron Collegeman, is is to demystify and de-anxiefy um, working in this arena, right? And so, as part of that, I've invited once again a chief technology officer for Orchestrate XR,
Yep.
Aaron Collegeman. And Aaron, would you do me a favor? And I'd like to bring you back on at another time to actually talk about Orchestrate and show building and how easy that is. But would you give us just a brief background on your company and what you do,
Yeah,
what it
yeah,
does?
yeah, yeah. Well, it's our thing, not my thing. However, uh, yeah. So Orchestrate was a couple of things before it became the thing that it is today. The thing that it is today is purely a software tool that lives in your web browser that lets anybody create VR experiences. That's what it is. We don't require you to code. You take a 360 camera, you capture real life. You can capture dangerous real life. We have people take it into fire safety training, real firefighters, real fire. They put aluminum around the camera to protect it, and they capture those things, and then they upload them into our web-based software, and they add layers. Layers add context, creates learning moments, creates engagement. You can assess with it, and then ultimately publish it. And when you publish it, you can put it out on there. No echo. Cool. You can put it out on VR headsets like MetaQuest, but we also have an iPad app that you can consume them on. Some people can't do headsets. Some experiences aren't good for VR, and so we support both. And of course, we have a web-based player too, and it works on the phone, so it works anywhere. You can create immersive experiences that people can consume on the go. So we're really focused right now on healthcare and healthcare applications, everything from patient experience uh, to navigating hospitals. Sometimes hospitals feel like mazes, and people create rich tours of these spaces on there. And then we have all manner of simulation, recorded simulations. So it's especially good for uh, creating captures of role play sim, which is very common in healthcare training and education arenas. And you can create replayable versions of these things so that people can take them over and over and over again. Something that I think we call reps and sets, and it really you build up your experience that way, so that then as a learner, when you go into those real life situations, you have them, and your mind is ready to learn, right? As opposed to having to go through all of the acclimation that you do for any sort of stress inoculation or situation. So anyway, that's Orchestrate in a nutshell. And anybody can learn more about it on orchestratexr.com.
And as as Aaron had pointed out, it was our company. I'm one of the founders of it. Although I'm not working inside of it right now, I am so proud of the product that's being built. And I encourage you to go out, look at Orchestrate XR. and because it's a sandbox for everybody to begin building immersive experiences right now, and you
Yep.
can deploy it so easily.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. And
so
we've got some really exciting things coming out too. We're not going to talk about any of that right now, but we're about to turn some real corners on making it feel more like editing video than ever before, right? The simplicity of that. So really
excellent,
cool.
excellent.
Yep.
So the topic and the reason why we're here today, and to follow up on demystifying things, Aaron and I were throwing around a couple of ideas last week, and then we were looking for a topic for this week, coming out of the story conversation with Dr. Clayton from the Air Force and Air University, and he asked, well, what if we were to ideate? What if we were to take and conceptualize, and them to watch you as the creative and me as the computer scientist think this through together, and have them watch how we've been working, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so anything you want to say before I introduce the idea?
No, only to say that just to sort of frame it up a little bit, right? Like we're gonna do a thing that I think we advertised as UX UI design, and I should say like I'm not a trained designer by any stretch of the imagination. I've just been working with this stuff for long enough that I know how to talk some of the talk and walk some of the walk, and I certainly value this particular part of what we're about to do. But anybody who's a trained UX designer or a trained UI designer might look at this and say, well, these guys are certainly following a strange pathway through this jungle, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to cut our way through the jungle. And I want to put just a quick emphasis on something here. We're recording this in this moment in time where AI is dominating everybody's imagination right now. And what you use AI to do in this space is just increasing and increasing and increasing in its efficacy. But what seems to stay constant and indeed even become more important as we go is design and design thinking. And really making sure that when we sit down with one of these wonderful tools that can create something in a heartbeat, that we're doing it very intentionally and that we're thinking about who we're creating it for and what it is that it's supposed to do. So that's the place that we're going to kind of stay in today, is the who's it for, what's it do, getting through it. And yeah, JJ, it starts with pitching the idea. So why don't you, I'll share my screen. I'll get our
Okay.
Miro board up, which is where I'm gonna collect everything here. Hold on a second. Push the wrong button, I think.
Yeah, when we
Nope.
begin mirror boarding together and mind mapping together, we gained a real efficiency and capability in this. So, if you watch this, you might want to see in June. Oh, I'm getting an echo.
I think it's just because I switched my screen. Am I back now?
Um, no, I'm still getting an echo.
Okay.
Warren, are you getting an echo?
No, I can hear everyone fine.
It's gone now.
Everyone looks
Is it
good.
going? All right, hang tight for me. Let me get this thing set up the right way. JJ, why don't you go ahead and start pitching the idea while I do that?
Okay, and what I wanted to say first was you're going to hear things like Scrum and Agile when you start, working inside of these groups. And there's certainly knowledge and there's certainly capability inside of these patterns, but two warnings. One, don't worry about it if you don't know it, right? We're showing you how we jump into things. And although Aaron and I have worked with Scrum and Agile teams before, that's not necessarily, the way we go about things inherently. We pick up pieces of that. The other part is don't let those patterns interfere with productivity. And sometimes you can focus on a process that actually begins to become detrimental. So just a little thought for us there. So here's the idea. Aaron brought up the term role play earlier, and Dungeons and Dragons was a huge formation for my character and who I am starting when I was in 5th grade. Telling immersive interactive stories, right? Participating with others and telling the stories. And so that ultimately is my goal. As we That ultimately is my goal. Is a role play driven immersive virtual world, and hopefully you've got sensors sitting on your head that are now able to neurologically connect with what you're thinking without invasive procedures, and and you can live through a novel experience. Imagine reading a novel, and instead of it being a set experience, it's a dynamic experience that you're affecting, and you're living through this dynamic experience. And at the end of it, you can then share it with somebody else. And so on the journey of that, Dungeons and Dragons. And how do we get it out into the world? How do we get it out of the room with your 5 friends, right? And so, one of the things that's been really nagging me is the idea of interactive clothing, right? And wanting to be able to create interactive clothing that causes and assists people in engaging with each other. So imagine that you've got a sports jersey, but instead of for your team, it's for your D&D class. So you're a fighter, you're a magic user, you're a cleric, you're a thief. And you've got these standards classes, but from a distance, it looks like a sports shirt. But as you get close, you see the patch is actually ruins, or, little, magical incantations, or, symbols of your axes being crossed or whatever. And you can even have your character's name over the back. But the thought is, instead of having a number, you have this big QR code, right? And you have an app on your phone, right? And so if you've got your app on, it lets people know where this elven warrior is walking around the mall. And if they hold up the phone when looking at you, there's a little sign over your head that says, "Hi, I'm Begegago," right? I don't know, try to spell that. And Begegago, and say hi. So you walk up to Begegago and you say, "Hey, Begegago, I'm Moon Knight," right? "Hey, Moon Knight." You pull out your phone and your app, and now you have a choice. You can duel each other for experience points, and obviously experience points amount into some kind of badges or those kinds of things, or you can campaign together. And if you choose to campaign together, an AI looks at each of your backstories and creates a convergent moment, right? That convergent moment ends up in a small story, and during those you can get magic items or gold, and so it's a different way of expanding your character. Later, there are ways to track who you've run into, and if other people have run into them, then you might both be able to invite that person to the campaign. And so you might not even know, but you get emailed these little story moments that your character has gone through with others that they've connected with in the past. And so you create this dynamic, growing story. And then in 2 years, we can take and create an AI that transforms that story into little animated moments, and you can go then, to the whatever and watch your character, have this moment. But that's right now the idea is, can we endow people with a second character and turn the world into a new adventurous world, right? And create moments, brief moments of connectivity between human beings, and engage them in play, right? And can we extend that play into an ongoing, living, imaginative world? Aaron, anything I miss?
No, I think that's really solid. And, so while you've been talking, I've been sort of trying to do a mind map. So just to sort of put a pin on that here for a second, you're talking about this role playing, what I'll call role playing IRL, right? Role playing in real life. And you talked about breaking out, of the cave, so to speak, and going out into real life with this. And so, there's right away, there's sort of two segments to what this experience is for people. There's a real life part of it, and there's a virtual life part of it, right? And in real life, you've got this jersey, which I don't want to I don't want to digress on any one thing too long, but one of the things that you said, this was one of the things when you first pitched it to me that I got really excited about, was the idea that it's not just an app, right? We've got 1,000 things that are like this, that are just an app on a phone, and people are walking around like this. And while there is a certain amount of this involved, because the phone is the thing that is bringing the virtual life and the real life together, the jersey really brings it out into real life. It is this thing that you are wearing while you're looking up in the world at other people, and it's the way that you identify as somebody who's playing the game, right? And I just thought that was so powerful. And so as we talk about this more and as it evolves more, I think you can expect me to keep coming back to this and wanting to really flesh this out, because right now I have an idea about how it works, and the sooner we make that idea real, the sooner we can test it and see how real people really respond to it. Which is, you were saying some stuff in the preamble about agile and all these things. And actually, I don't even want to use that word again on this entire call. I just want to say that the sooner we make things real, the sooner they meet up against real people, and the sooner we find out how our ideas really work in the real world. And that's the whole ball game, right? So everything else we do and how we do it is about accelerating ourselves through that. So just real quick, some other things you talked about, right? We've got a mobile app that's in the real world. We've got something, you didn't use these words, but we talked about it the first time, which was there's a sort of Pokemon Go aspect to this thing where you're traveling around in the real world. The app knows where you are in the real world, and there might be things that it has cached, geocached in the real world for you to discover, whether those are monsters to fight or waypoints in an adventure or non-player characters that it's developed that it needs you to meet somewhere. There's a whole aspect to this that is layered on the real world. And then the really crucial things you said at the end, which is this is really about getting people to connect in real life. Aside, I was in Jim Barnett Park just last week, and there were a group of 20 somethings playing Pokemon Go. And I hadn't seen people out in public playing Pokemon Go in a while. There were 12 people wandering around playing Pokemon Go together. And I really want this thing to be more of that, because the play, the getting people out to play in the real world feels so critical right now. And as we continue this weird lopsided recovery from the pandemic, giving people more reason to get out in public and create connections with people in real life just feels like everything to me right now. And that centers on this thing of growth, that you really there's only there's a certain kind of growth that you can only get through interacting with real people. And when you're doing, even if you're doing it through avatars, it's just not the same thing. So that's the real life part of it. And then you've got the virtual life part of it, which is the character and the dueling and the campaigning. And you didn't describe it this way, but the AI dungeon mastering, right? Which is really critical. And then these things that you get to accumulate as part of being this character in the virtual life: experience points, gold, or some sort of currency that you're accumulating, collectibles, things that can be traded, things that, sit up on your virtual wall, or end up being patches on your real life jersey, right? And then the concept of parties. Now, you said one thing this time that you didn't say the last time we talked, which was the idea that, and maybe I don't know if I misunderstood you, so I want to hover here for just a second, but it's the idea that your character, once developed, might go on adventures without you, along with parties. Did I understand you correctly that way?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. That if both of you have met somebody, those names come up and you could click on them to say, you know, Begagle and Begagle's brother Bagoogle, you know, get to go with, Moon Knight on a
Well,
whatever.
I mean, I think that's fascinating, right? And so, for lack of a better term, for right now, I'll call that Tamagotchi mode, where it's like you've developed this character, and when you're not actually using it as your avatar, it actually just continues on and does stuff. So long as you don't let it die, right? I guess
Right.
how far we want our AI agents to actually be us in the virtual life. So how are we feeling? Are we feeling like we're hearing each other here? Did you get enough
Yes.
from me to validate that I captured it?
Yeah, and I haven't even thought of there being negative repercussions. For me, the whole thing is about character growth, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. And I don't
story
know. I mean, I don't know. You That's an interesting thing to set up. I don't know that I want to dwell on the negatives right now. I think there are so many positives in this. And I think if there are negatives, we'll start to discover them just as soon as people start to use it.
Yep.
And I'll just say this other thing. I mean, as a safeguard, like I have come up in the world that gave birth to social media. Like I've been using this stuff since it evolved and I've seen how it has devolved. And what this is not doing for me is it's not setting off any of the warning signals that I have come to expect from new technology, right? There's all sorts of things that we would want to work on in the future, like privacy and protecting people and harassment, and those are normal. That's all normal stuff. Anytime you create a digital space where people connect, you get those things. So no more negatives. I don't think there's any reason to dwell on any of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And when I was talking about a negative, what I meant was
Oh,
negative repercussions to the character in the story.
oh,
So, so
that's okay.
Begagle is in a story that he didn't know about, and he loses an arm. No, you know, um,
Yeah, that seems a little harsh.
you know, um, um, or he's got less experience points or less hit points next time he sees himself.
Mhm.
Either way, I was thinking that predominantly it's a positive story growth.
Got it.
But I
Got it.
appreciate what you're saying too. Right now we're ideating, and you've got to build on
Yeah.
the positive ideas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. So now at this point, we haven't spent a ton of time. We've spent a pretty good amount of time talking about what this experience is like. But I don't think we've really talked about who it's for. So maybe our next sort of 5-minute burst of activity here should be about who this is for, who you imagine playing this game.
Um, the 15 to 30-year olds.
Okay.
And I think there needs to be a clean break between those groups. But
Meaning they need to be able to play separately.
yeah, yeah, I think under 18 needs to have their own world.
Mhm.
And but either way, what we found is there's a brand new resurgence in role play, right? To the point where Dungeons and Dragons position in the market is being threatened.
Okay.
And
Threatened because there are so many other games in the marketplace?
there are other games in the
Yeah.
marketplace, right? There's Pathfinder, there's Palladium, and then there's all kinds of lots of little, offshoots, but those are full game, systems. And the truth of the matter is you can play without any system, right? Once you understand the story structure and you have a DM that's fair and you've got to justify things, you don't have to have dice. Um, but so there's a resurgence. There's a massive resurgence, and part of that is because we're in this evolution of story, right? Where we're going from being the watcher to wanting to be the protagonist with choice in the story, right? And this has been taking root, since the 80s. Even though Dungeons and Dragons is older than that, the 80s is really early 80s when it took off. Anyway, so I think that there's a need, and I think that the young people are looking for opportunities to touch grass, right? And so if we look at places like the mall, can we rejuvenate malls? Because now it's a public place where people can walk around and greet each other and have these things. We need, to your point, having new reason to get out, a new reason to connect with each other and to grow our networks, and to discover that we are not social media's singular branding of who we might fit into that demographic of, right? We meet each other personally, we get personal experiences um, that blow away, stereotypes and large preconceived ideas. Yeah,
Yep.
Warren.
I'm really enjoying this conversation and getting an awful lot out of it. But I have another meeting, so I'm going to have to sign off. But let me say, you've whet my appetite. And is there a possibility that a group of us can actually get together and perform what you're describing or experience at JJ? Aaron?
Well, Aaron, I think we can talk about that after Warren leaves. Actually, I was thinking, an early version of this, we could just print a large QR code on an 8x10 piece of paper and tape it to our chest and our back, and play the game.
Yeah. We'll figure out how to lean test it, Warren, and thank you very much for letting us know that you want to play. We'll figure out how to incorporate you into the early testing of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to, there's no learning like experiencing something. So
Yeah.
carry on.
Hey,
All right.
man, and thanks for coming to the lunch and for speaking in. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no, this is great. Keep this series going, JJ, Aaron. It's really valuable.
Thank you,
But
brother.
anyway, I'm sorry I have to sign off. But I can look at the recording. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, very good. All right.
Thanks.
Have a great day, guys.
Bye, Doc.
I know. So this is great. So we were talking about the who. I wrote archetypes initially, but I'm going to stick with trying to pull all this down and make it really practical, right? So we're talking about the who. You had one little thing about the what of the who, right? The 15 to 30-year-olds, that's the one characteristic of these people that we talked about. And then everything else that rolled out of your mouth was a why, which is great, right? Because that really helps us to center on the how, the thing that we're talking about making. And you got people who need to touch grass, people who want to be the protagonist, people who love role playing, people who need connection. I pulled that one from what we were talking about before. So can you tell me a little bit more about the what? Like the 15 to 30-year-old aspect of that is interesting to me. Do you think that something like this appeals to men and women equally?
I do, but specific men and women, right, that fit into the Dungeons and Dragons role play community.
Yeah.
And here's something else, and I'm sorry, I guess I focus on whys because I'm getting to a why again.
That's better, honestly, than anything else. So
Which is the fact that this is a community that deserves identification and recognition, right? And so we look at the sporting community and we see how the sporting community identifies and creates a sense of belonging, right? And a sense of uniqueness in the jersey. And to say, hey, here's a community. We were the nerds and the geeks of the world, right? I mean, I don't know, Aaron. I'm the role player. You're the computer scientist or the computer guy. I mean, and here we are. We're doing all right.
Yeah. Well, in my case, failure to develop social skills early on, but I think that, yeah, it's I like
right?
this. I like this reasoning though. People who crave membership and recognition, we probably spend the entire rest of the call talking about just that aspect of it. But let's put a pin in that one for now and come back to it. Let's talk real quick about the when and the where, right? You had a pretty good example of a where there, which was old malls, but more generally, this is played in public spaces, right?
Yep.
You could play this at home with people, but it's not for that. It's for going out into the world and finding other people and connecting with them and playing outside. And so in that sense, it's hard to put any more specific of a limiter on it than that, right? Like I want to see people meet up in bars and play this. I want to see them wandering around the Old Town Mall in Winchester playing this. Like there's no limit in my mind to the size of the playground
Conventions.
there.
Conventions are a great place.
Oh, that's a good one. Yes, yes, yes. We talked about that the other day. Conventions are a huge space for this.
Yeah,
Imagine just
I mean,
having a booth at a convention for this, right? And being able to create temporary tattoos for, the people who sign up on the floor that day and they get their QR code right away, right? Um, so
I
what
mean,
about the
imagine
when?
a
Oh, go
haunted,
ahead, Jay. Go ahead.
imagine a haunted farm, right? Like I was at one last Halloween. And everybody creates a character, and you can choose whether you're a killer or a victim, right? And and you can meet people throughout the haunted, hayride and everything. And hey, this is, we're two victims, let's escape together, right?
Yeah. You just did a thing that was interesting to me there. That was the first time I heard you say characters, right? The idea that I might be a player of this game and have a character that is my day-to-day character, but then I go to this themed location like a haunted farm, and for that day I adopt a completely different character that I'm going to be playing, and that's very normal as I understand it in role playing. I don't do a whole lot of that myself. Actually, my girlfriend does way more of it than I do, which is kind of funny to me. But anyway, it's that's cool. Themed locations, and I would imagine a themed location, theme parks, right? That would be a huge one for something like this,
Yeah.
right? Um, so then what about the when? Is all day, all night, all the time?
So,
Do our characters sleep? Are they ever forced to take a nap?
the AI figures that out for you. Um, I, so the launching of this thing is the difficulty, right?
Yeah,
Because you have to have an aggregate of people for an experience, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
in my imagination, this was really for Wizards of the Coast, right?
yeah, yeah,
But you pointed out that this game can be played really. That's why you called it tribes when we were talking about it, because you were like, wow, we're building different tribes of people that like
yeah.
different themes of story or experience, right? Or setting.
Well,
Um,
I give our colleague Tim credit for that one because it was Tim who actually mentioned tribes, and but I think that's right, and I immediately put that on the board, and so I think if we're to put any answer on when, it's subject to the availability of other players. That's really it in a nutshell, and I do think that is one thing that makes bringing this to life challenging, but I think you might find, especially with the passion that we know exists in this target audience,
yeah.
that it's easier to start this than you think. And that was really what I was trying to emphasize when we were talking about this before. I don't know that you need permission or even support yet from a
No.
bigger entity. You really just need to find those passionate people. And I think a lot of them live online right now too, so which makes them easier to find, right? So,
Well, and
um,
I think, we go to one of those conventions, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
and
yeah,
and print out things to put on people's front and back and invite them to play a game with everybody else for free, you
yeah.
know? And we use that as a test. Um, yeah, okay.
Yep. So I think what we talk about now, because we've sort of established the idea and the mission behind the idea and who it is for. We've talked a little bit about the fact that it's probably a mobile app. I do think that makes a lot of sense. Of course, as we spend most of our time talking these days about immersive technologies like VR, there are probably ways that we could find to extend this, into virtual realities as well. But I think focusing on it as an app for now makes a whole lot of sense. And certainly helps it find its way into real life, such as it is these days, because everybody carries those phones now on their hips. And so I think that a good next step for us is to really talk about the actual lived experience of a person who's playing this thing for the first time, right? And I think that we have to start from a place of taking for granted that there's at least already one person in the world who's doing this, right? That there's at least one person who already is out there who has this jersey on, who has the QR code on their jersey. They're ready player one, right? They're player one. And every player after that is a player that gets into the game by virtue of meeting that person or somebody who connected with that person, which is a really fun way to think about it, right? And so, there's a gimme here that is basically find a player IRL, right? You find somebody who's out there who's already playing the game by way of their jersey. They have a jersey on, right? And then you scan their jersey, scan the QR code, uh, you download the app, and then what? What happens after that?
You download the app, and you have your immediate experience with the person,
Okay.
right? It's just some initiation moments where you're born into the world, right? It's very innocuous because the world doesn't know who you are yet,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
You get
mhm.
a first magical item, right? That's some kind of egg that doesn't open up until after you create your character, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so after you have your brief experience, you're given the opportunity to create your own character.
All right. So here's what I think's happening, right? So you're born, onboarding. You're born. Welcome to the world, JJ.
Yep,
You get your first gift from the
yep.
system, right? Uh, I don't hear us I didn't hear you really describe anything that is like character development yet, right?
Not
This is
yet, not
basically
yet. But there is a little because what happens before the the campaigning mode is each person should answer one or two questions that influences the story.
okay. All right. I'm gonna write story engine over here.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm gonna write questions so I don't forget about that. I'm trying to think of the experience of these two people who may or may never have met before. And one says, "Hey, that's a cool jersey. What the heck is that?" And the other one says, "Well, I'm playing tribes and you can play too. You just have to scan my QR code." And the person scans the QR code, and while they're doing that, there's some more discussion. Well, what's it like? Well, how do you do this? How do you do that? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then the app says, "Welcome, JJ." And it
Welcome,
says,
campaigner.
"Welcome, Camilla, you're born." And you're this formless thing, right? And you're like, and then you get your first gift, and we could talk more about what that might be. And then what? Do you think that it is at that moment character development by way of questions?
No, no,
Or
no.
is it
So yeah, yeah. Let me give you a little bit more idea of being born, right?
yep.
So welcome, campaigner, right? Your eyes slowly unglue as you look around and find yourself in an alleyway strewn with trash, right? Um, from above you, somebody pours a pot, what do you call them, whatever, and barely misses you, right? A growl light takes place over your left shoulder, and you see dun dun dun, the guy who's across from you, right? Struggling with this, do you thus or do you this, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And that one choice makes me invested in the story that's being written because I've influenced that story. I created that outcome somehow.
So I'm gonna say environment is established through story. And we'll come back and flesh that out another time. And then after you're born, you actually create your first connection, right? And your first connection is that person who got you to play. And
Yeah.
and then I think you experience your first conflict, right? Now, maybe conflict, maybe choice. What's interesting about it, and you could check me on this, what's interesting about casting it as a conflict, you know, is it gives you and the person you just met an opportunity to be on the same side against a common foe, right? And there's nothing like a common enemy to make friends of strangers, right?
Yep.
And so, if it's like you're born on the streets in pauper's clothing, and here is this knight, but
Yep.
he needs your help, and you're going to fight off this giant rat together, right? And it's a conflict that you're guaranteed not to lose because nobody wants to lose their first conflict in a game, right?
Yep.
And from that first conflict, you uh I think it's both of these things happening simultaneously. You're born, you learn where you are, you
Yep.
experience your first conflict, and by virtue of your first conflict, you create your first connection and you get your first reward, right? All
Yep.
of that happens in the first, say, 15 minutes of play, right? And now what? Now what? I think
So,
now
so
comes
you get your
character
first
development,
reward
right?
and you resolve your first contact.
Say more about what resolve your first contact means.
So you've just scanned somebody's shirt, right? And you've gotten your first reward. You're reading what happened between the two of you, right?
Mhm.
And maybe you have a final question that resolves the story, right? Or maybe that's the end. Either way, there needs to be a final moment between the two people that are playing together.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. And I mean, maybe instead of conflict, we call this action. There are these things about role-playing games generally that because I don't play them enough, I don't know how to define them,
Yep.
right? And I don't want to get lost in that. But it's basically there's action in a role play game, or otherwise it's just a series of conversations and nothing is ever happening. So, but
Yep.
the real value of this is that that first action involves this person that you just met more or less directly. And so, yeah, however it is resolved.
Well, that's
um
it, right? Is the point after get your first reward? We need a resolution moment.
do you think the resolution causes the reward?
No, I think the reward comes inside. It
You see what I'm
can.
saying? You see
It
what I'm saying?
it can, or it can just come out of the action in the scene.
Yeah, yeah. uh and I think that, yeah, connections, this word connection, this is like friends, right? This is friends on a platform. This is somebody who now you know who they are in the game. You're allowed to know where they are in the game. Like these are the typical sorts of social media controls that exist in every other application, right? Um, and there's room there to decide, like, do I want to continue to allow JJ to know where I am in the game? Do I want to be, and that's different from those other things that we talk about, like, are we in a party together? right? Like just because I know that you're in this world and that you're out there and that we might play again in the future doesn't mean that we're actually going on campaigns together, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Um
Right. And
and
that's an advanced kind of thing. What I really like, and I've had to play this through my head as I'm reading this. What I really like about your first reward being the resolution is it ends on an A. It ends on a high note, right?
Mhm.
And it's a great win, right? What did I get? I got experience points, I got gold, I got a magic item, right? Um, and and then after that moment, when you walk away, well, after that moment, it says, "Would you like to um, develop your character, or build your character, or
right.
enhance your character, or whatever that it's going to be?" Right?
Right. And so I think that's the next layer of this, right? If onboarding was the first layer of it, the next layer of it is character development.
Yep.
And to come back to this, there's two aspects of this, or several, right? There's your backstory, which has to be developed somehow through dialogue, probably with an AI, right? This is maybe the first role for the AI dungeon master, is to
Yeah.
help you develop your backstory. There are, and now I'm going to roll out things that I know superficially, right? Right. There's your character type, or your race, as it were, right? Are you a human? Are you an elf? Are you an orc? Are you, what really are you?
Mhm.
Um, there's
Class.
your skills, right? What did
Your
you say?
class.
Sorry?
Your class.
Class. Yes. Does skills back up into class?
It does. Skills and abilities back up into class.
And then of course there's the appearance, right? Big, small, green. Do you carry a sword? Do you carry a mace? Like what are
Are
you
you
going to
dressed in
be?
red? Are you dressed in green? Are you dressed in leather or metal?
Yep. Yep. And I do think that some, whatever rewards actually come out of this, some of it has to be currency. Some amount of currency comes from your first experience.
Yeah, yeah, gold for sure. Yeah.
Because I think people expect a certain amount of shopping to be part of this as well,
Yep.
or call it outfitting, right?
Yep.
And this is all the sorts of normal things that come along with that. You've got your clothing, and you've got things like armor, right?
And weapons and potions
Weapons.
and staves.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think clothing, armor, and weapons.
Yeah.
And
Why don't we
it
call, and the
props.
last category is like supplies,
Yeah,
potions, whatever, matches, things you can trade.
yeah.
Um, and so now, and then of course the really, you know, clutch thing that brings it back to real life is the jersey, right? And going back to something you said a little earlier, I really like the idea that it might be possible to play this by just printing your QR code on a piece of paper, or ordering an iron on for your shirt, you know, versus shelling out cash for a jersey. But
Yeah.
I mean I think both are valid, right? Um but I think, it's print out QR code, or it's, you know, uh decorate your jersey.
I mean, this is a great on-campus game.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Universities can turn it into a competition to learn about the university and to meet people, and um,
Yeah. And I wonder too if there's room for the QR codes to be like an iron-on patch too, right?
yep. Yeah, the idea is, can we remove access challenges?
Yeah. So this is really get your QR code, right? That's really what this is. But this is your permanent sort of identification in the game world is that QR code. And however it comes into real life is subject to where you are, how
Yeah.
much money you have to invest in playing the game. Um, all right. So we've got 8 more minutes. There's one other aspect of this that I would like to talk about a little bit.
Okay.
And then we'll have to set up our next conversation to sort of do the UI part. But I think that since this first thing is more of a campaign party experience where you're on the same team with the other player, we should talk a little bit about what it feels like to duel other people, right? Uh, do you agree with that, or is there something else you'd rather explore with the time we have left?
Um, I think dueling is a gaming mechanics set of gaming mechanics that we can figure out. Um, the question is, are we looking through the phone at the character in front of us? Is it an AR character in front of us in the phone, right?
Yeah.
Are they swinging at us? Is it and does that make it feel third person, or can we truly lay it over the person, right? And then how are we going to make them shorter than they actually might be, or does that not
Yeah,
matter? You know?
yeah.
Uh,
So I have some preconceived ideas about that, right? I think
uh,
that
I also
there
want you to
is
remember that Dungeons and Dragons is a game that happens in the imagination. So
Mhm,
we can literally make it a written text-based experience and fit inside of their current ethos without needing to spectacularize
mhm.
the whole thing.
I do think that there's sort of a middle ground. I I don't know that there needs to be really sophisticated tech graphics solutions here, especially not for a prototype.
Yep.
I do think that um, you need a little bit more than text if you're going into the app space with it. But that's an idea. I again that all of this the market really bears out what the truth is here.
Yep.
But to respond more precisely to what you said before, I think if you're fighting a character that somebody has visually designed for themselves, that's going to work best as an interface that's presented on your phone and not as a layer, not like mixed reality or AR.
Yep.
But if you are playing the party game, the geolocated game version of this with a group, and you go out with a group of 4 buddies and you're walking Old Town Winchester and there's a monster that you're going to fight together at the end of the mall, you should be able to hold up the phone and see the monster on the mall. I think that's where the AR and the ability of this thing to not like what's wonderful about role play and everything that you just said about the imagination can also create a source of tension because everybody has a different idea of what that thing is and looks like and is saying. Now, the dungeon master is the thing that the person who makes all that work. The dungeon master maintains the character, maintains the context constantly. But that one benefit that you get from this phone is that you can have shared visualizations of these things. Wow, it's a giant dragon. Look how big it is, and you all see the same thing and have that same, and that increases the shared nature of the experience, right?
Yeah. I
um
mean, that's like Sword Art Online's movie, where the combat is in the world and all the kids are hanging out in parks together, and uh yeah.
So we'll just do it like this. There's dueling, there's a dueling mechanic, right? There's a battling mechanic. I think this one is just 2D graphics. This one is probably AR if you can figure it out. And then there's this other thing that we talked about last time, and I think you did just mention the word that there's dice involved, right? And I actually kind of like that. There's plenty of games out there that are attempting to simulate real combat, and I think if you wanted that, then you would need AR for things like dueling. But what evens the playing field and what ties this all back to the tabletop gaming is the dice, right? It's the dice, it's the modifiers you get from experience, it's the fact that you've been playing this for 10 years, so your sword swipes hurt more than other people's, right? Like that's really important. And I don't want to lose that. That's a really cool thing from what role playing is. So um look at all that we unpacked. And I think, we've managed to steer clear of jargon for most of the conversation. And I think that the next time we get to talk about this, we can start to imagine what it actually looks like. But I'll make this claim, having talked so much about who it's for, what it is, and how it kind of works, like it is now at a point where you could conceivably start to vibe code some of this stuff, right? Like that is the, you know, benefit, I guess, of what, these technologies bring us. But there's both of these journeys, and I'm happy to go on either one of them with you. So we just have to figure out what we want to do next.
Are you interested in joining me for lunch next Thursday?
Yeah, sure. We can do this again.
Excellent. So let's move on to the next step with this. Aaron, this for me is the most rewarding part of the experience. You know,
Yeah.
the opportunity to collaborate and ideate and create something together with somebody. Yeah, uh, yeah. Anyway, thank you, sir. It was wonderful to have lunch with you, man, and to build. And you have a great day. And thanks on behalf of Next Wave Network for
Yeah,
all that
yeah,
you're sharing.
yeah.
By the way, congratulations on being our first badge winner, right?
Oh, yeah.
Um, and
Thanks.
and and I appreciate that, And here, we're establishing a culture, um, and we're teaching people how to participate in the culture, and they're watching us, and they're learning, and we're growing each week in numbers. So I really appreciate that. Thank you, man.
Yeah, yeah, cool, man. Well, thank you for putting it all together, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, sounds good. Adios.
All right, bye. Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to that conversation between JJ and I as much as I enjoyed having it. So I just wanted to take everybody briefly through um, the scratches that JJ and I were making on a whiteboard while we were talking. What you're looking at here is one of my favorite tools ever. It's called Miro. If you've never used electronic whiteboarding tool, how old am I? If you've never used a web-based whiteboarding tool before, Miro is an amazing place to start. They have such a fantastic collection of templates and tools and parts and pieces, and the functionality that's baked in for allowing more than one person to be modifying the board at a time and turning these things into slide decks once you've made them. They even have a really impressive beta of a prototyping tool, which I hope JJ and I will be using during our next conversation as we move out of user experience and into user interface. But just a brief sort of exploration of what we've got here. Role playing in real life, role playing IRL. This was sort of where JJ and I started with me listening to his pitch for this concept, and separating real life and virtual life into these two pieces as I did in the conversation. So creating mind maps in Miro is really, really easy. The mind map tool is down here on the toolbar. You just drag it out and drop it, give the center post a name, and then you can add branches either by clicking the button or by hitting the tab key. And of course, branches can have additional branches of their own. You can reposition the branches once they've been created. It's a really solid, minimal implementation of what mind maps can be in a digital space, and I hope you'll give it a try. It's certainly an awesome way to be collecting all the parts and pieces of a brainstorming conversation as they come up. And again, if you've got a couple people who feel comfortable getting in here at the same time, everybody can be modifying the same mind map at once, which is pretty amazing. So frame 2 here was our brief conversation about audience, the who and the why and the where and the when. This was where I was really excited that much of JJ's thinking focused on the why. That's really critical at an early stage in UX design, is understanding what the motivations are behind why somebody would pick up the thing that you've made to solve a problem, even if the problem is something like entertainment or connection. So that was our audience exploration. And then we moved into a user experience flow. Now, I just used stickies for this part of it. Sticky notes are easy to just drag and drop onto the canvas. They have different shapes, they have different colors, and they're the easiest thing to grab for. A lot of the templates make use of sticky notes for brainstorming exercises and organizational exercises. And while there are probably tools in here for creating more elegant diagrams and traditional symbols for start and stop and decision points, our high-level conversation didn't really get into a whole lot of that. So I was just able to use sticky notes. But we do have a starting point here, which was finding a player in real life who has a jersey or QR code on their chest, as it were, scanning the QR code, downloading the app. You can see that what I've done here is when I move into a new segment of the flow, I just sort of move downward like this. And when I'm sort of carrying forward the current flow, I move out to the right. And so you can sort of trace what I'm doing there throughout. Last and not least, we did a brief conversation at the end about mechanics. I'm sure we will come back and expand this. But suffice to say that we expect the mechanics of this experience to build and lean on traditional tabletop gaming mechanics. The sorts of adventuring and dice rolling and skill attribution and all that kind of stuff. Things that JJ knows far more about than I do. So that's the whiteboard. I hope that was helpful to see a little bit of what we were talking about. And again, I apologize for the technical snafu, and we'll make sure that doesn't happen again in our future conversations. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you at the next one.